Welcome to the Startup Passport by eConsulate. Today I'm joined by Oscar van Veen. Thank you for joining. You're the Director of Innovation at the Port of Rotterdam.
Yep.
Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do there at the Port of Rotterdam?
Well, as you said, I'm Oscar van Veen. Joined Port of Rotterdam 6 years ago, and before that I was an entrepreneur. Started at Erasmus University, and that was at the start of internet. In 1995, we saw internet coming. And then we built a company around it, and 20 years later, we sold that company. We built websites, made applications, and I thought, hey, what am I going to do with the second half of my career? And I wanted to join the Port of Rotterdam because I think we're in a very important time frame. It's not about bigger, more, but it's about being a smart port. And for us, a smart port is being very efficient, sustainable, and safe. So those are new ecosystem goals, and the only way that we're going to reach those goals is by innovating together. So not only the incremental innovation within companies, but really innovate with your whole ecosystem. And we have a term for that. We call it multiple helix innovation. And that is as much as innovate together with governments, with commercial partners, with knowledge institutes, but also with your whole ecosystem in our port.
And what would you say are the goals of the port? So you talked about innovation, but innovation in what sense, or for what overall goal that you're trying to achieve or looking at?
Well, you see that we're in a lot of transitions nowadays. So we have the energy transition, we have the raw material transition, the safety and security transition, the digital transition, and we're used to innovate in those change. But as the center of the ecosystem, we as Port of Rotterdam, we can also oversee where there is crosslinks between those ecosystems. So how can we smartly together aim for funds and investing? How can we connect different startup ecosystems? So and all again to reach those ecosystem goals of being smart, efficient, sustainable, and safe.
To pick up one transition that you talked about, the energy transition, just as an example, would you say there is right now a sort of gap between the current demand that we have, but then also for the need for a change, that the change is not able to pick up with the demand that we have right now, and therefore there's sort of an imbalance between the need for a change, but the sheer amount of demand we have?
Yeah, and that's also, it's something that we never did before. And I totally agree that there's a gap. But at the same time, you see that together with all those big companies that we see as polluting nowadays, we have to make that change together. And they're putting a lot of effort in the transition as well, because only then you can get there.
And how do you see your role as being part of the Port of Rotterdam in the entrepreneurial ecosystem of Rotterdam? We talked about ecosystems before, you mentioned them. So how do you see the role of the port in there?
Initiating and connecting. That's a really important role that we have, because there's change needed, as you say, and change doesn't always come from the big companies, but it also starts with good ideas, such as where we are today at the startup competition. So you need also this new entrepreneurial ideas. And we can also connect there between the bigger companies and the smaller startups.
So that means that the port is not only trying to support new technologies, let's say, by only implementing them within the port, but then they also have other initiatives to maybe, could you say, be more like a middleman in a sense?
Yeah, sometimes we feel like the orchestrator there. And yeah, you mentioned the gap that there is. So sometimes you need to push things forward in order to get interesting on the market before they're even interesting on the market. So yeah, a lot of initiating, pushing, pulling, and combining things.
Obviously, the Port of Rotterdam is pretty international. It's the biggest port in Europe. Does that then also mean that you're also working internationally, or trying also to adapt innovation that you have from different countries, different continents?
Yeah, that's absolutely on a global level. We're still one of the most innovating ports in the world. And so we're innovating together with other ports because they're not our competitors. So maybe Antwerp and Hamburg are, but also with them, we innovate together because only together we can up our game. So yeah, internationally, we work on standardization. For instance, our drone ecosystem, we do that together with other ports to push things further and faster.
And obviously, you have been a founder as well yourself. Now, being part of the Port of Rotterdam, if there are founders out there that have a certain idea for something, what would you say is now the best way to, or the best type of idea that, for example, a port would need to go forward? Is it more tapping into those like transition fields that we are in right now and trying to bring in like innovative ideas?
So yes and no. Tap into existing things is also always good, but I'll be the last to say that you don't have to think out of the box. So any good idea is a good idea.
Great. Very last question, because you also said that you studied in Rotterdam.
Yeah.
Would you say that a university or those institutions, educational institutions, can also be helpful for maybe young entrepreneurs, students that are just starting off and with an idea, so that they can take aspects from there?
Oh, absolutely. And especially nowadays. Back in the days that I was studying, you were really being steamed ready for the big companies like Unilever, Shell, etc. But nowadays there are a lot of startup programs, not only attached to the university, but also attached to other ecosystems. And but the university is a perfect place to start nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to know for all the young entrepreneurs. Thank you very much for the insights on the Port of Rotterdam.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining.
Cheers.